am Mike Ford, Chair of the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Foundation. I'm delighted to be with our medal recipient, Senator Elizabeth Dole, and Roger Porter, who is a trustee of the Foundation Board, as well as co-chair of the awards committee that nominated Senator Dole and her husband, Senator Bob Dole, for this award. We are here to recognize Senator Dole and her husband's tremendous service to our nation. Roger, I will turn the program over to you to describe the qualities and achievements that set Elizabeth and Robert Dole apart to make them worthy to receive our 2022 Gerald R. Ford Medal for Distinguished Public Service.
Thank you. Well, awarding the Gerald R. Ford Medal for Distinguished Public Service to two individuals is not the norm. This year's award of the medal to Robert and Elizabeth Dole is, however, an understandable and appropriate exception. Interestingly, they began in different regions of the country and with very different backgrounds. Happily, their lives became inextricably bound together in a wonderful way. We live in a land of freedom which provides great latitude to its citizens to choose the path they will follow and to chart their destiny. Let's turn first to Senator Robert Dole. Born in Russell, Kansas, Bob Dole was a product of the nation's heartland. A multi-sport athlete in high school, Dole had visions of a collegiate athletic career and then becoming a surgeon. Like others, his family made it through the Depression with few of the comforts of life, but with drive and determination without a trace of self-pity. He enlisted in the Army in World War II, and near the end of the conflict in Europe, he was wounded in Italy, seeking to assist a fellow wounded soldier. Initially left for dead, he was eventually transported to a medical facility, the first of many where he would spend the next 3 years. He never fully recovered from those wounds, eventually losing the use of his right arm. During his political career, he championed the rights and the needs of the disabled and of those who had served honorably. The title that meant most to him was veteran. A vice presidential candidate with Gerald R. Ford in 1976 and a three-time presidential aspirant in 1980, 88, and 96, he finally received his party's presidential nomination, only to lose in the general election in 1996, consistent with the pattern that incumbent presidents are not defeated in their re-election bid by someone from the previous generation. It was in the Congress that he left his mark. U.S. representatives and senators inevitably face competing responsibilities. One involves attending to the particular interests of the voters from one's district or state. The other involves responding to the general interest, what is best for the country as a whole. Bob Dole balanced this tension as well as any of his contemporaries. He never forgot his fellow Kansans, including the farmers and small business owners whom he knew well. He was formidable in shaping the details of agriculture legislation. The constituency service his office provided Kansans was among the best of his peers in the House, where he served for 8 years, and in the Senate, where he served for nearly 28 years. He never forgot where he came from. At the same time, he was among the least parochial of legislators on foreign policy, taxes and budgets, and social issues such as civil rights, the treatment of veterans and the disabled, and the environment. As he moved from a junior senator to leading the powerful Senate Finance Committee to Republican leader, his trajectory brought him closer to the political center. His skill in putting and keeping together majorities was remarkable, in part because he appreciated the special circumstances of individual senators, and in part because his colleagues trusted his word. These were inevitably bipartisan coalitions requiring a special kind of give and take. His often self-deprecating humor eased the tensions that can arise when strong-minded and strong-willed individuals pursue their preferences. A primary objective for him was to make things work. And this involved reaching agreements on policy questions, resolving issues, finding common ground. For more than 130 hours, the White House and the Senate negotiated an administration leadership agreement on the Clean Air Act in 1990. Often after the evening sessions would conclude, Bob Dole and I would retire to his office, and he would share his insights with me on where the negotiations were heading and on the Senate as an institution. He described his experience working as minority leader with Robert Byrd of West Virginia and George Mitchell of Maine. He noted that George Mitchell and I often disagree on the direction of policy, but he treats me like a majority leader should treat his counterpart. He keeps me informed. He recognizes that members of both parties have lives and need the ability to plan. He's never tried to pull a fast one on me. His respect for Senate employees led to his being named repeatedly as the nicest of the 100 senators. Ronald Reagan agreed, saying his title of leader is not just a job title, it's a description of the man. On July 22nd each year, he received a call from George H.W. Bush wishing him a happy birthday and reminding him that he was still a year older than his caller. The playful exchange demonstrated that two rivals could remain friends. Throughout Bush's term in the White House, Dole gave him his full support and skill in helping to build successful legislative coalitions. They remained lifelong friends. In 1975, he married Elizabeth Hanford Dole, and the two of them maintained a remarkable partnership for nearly half a century. They had much in common. Both eventually served in the Senate, although not simultaneously. Both ran for president, again, not simultaneously. Both devoted their life to public service. Both relied on their faith and unflagging determination. They supported rather than competed with one another in their careers. Dole's youth and wartime experience strengthened his empathy for those who faced genuine adversity. His resilience illustrates what one can accomplish through grit and determination. His love of country prompted his lengthy public service. His example serves as an inspiration to all who share his great affection for a land of opportunity. Elizabeth Hanford Dole's roots were anchored in Salisbury, North Carolina, where she excelled academically and demonstrated early a brand of leadership that was grounded in blazing trails and leading by example. At Duke University, she studied political science, graduated with distinction as a member of Phi Beta Kappa, and was elected student body president. She saw a place for women in the ranks of those who would lead our country and build a land of which we could be proud. Her healthy ambition, without a trace of arrogance, focused on getting things done rather than accumulating awards and recognition. Her ambition took her to Harvard, where she earned graduate degrees in education and law, one of only 25 women in her law school class of 500. Public service beckoned, first at the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, and then in the White House, where she served as deputy to the Special Assistant for Consumer Affairs during the Nixon administration. The president appointed her to a 6-year term as a member of the Federal Trade Commission, a major independent regulatory agency. When Ronald Reagan was elected president, he appointed Elizabeth as assistant to the president for public liaison. Our West Wing offices were next to one another. During his first year, President Reagan announced that he would create a National Productivity Advisory Committee to help develop recommendations for improving the nation's productivity. We determined that it would be most successful if the committee was bipartisan, involving business and labor leaders, state and local officials, and academicians. Elizabeth accepted the challenge of securing and recommending 5 labor leaders to serve on the committee. She succeeded. And then 2 days before the public announcement, the air traffic controllers went on strike, and the president responded by declaring that if they did not return to work within 48 hours, they would lose their jobs. The head of the AFL-CIO called Elizabeth to inform her that in light of this action, the union leaders would not participate in joining the committee. We regrouped. Undeterred, Elizabeth Dole spent the following 3 months lining up 5 major union leaders who agreed to serve on the committee and contributed to its more than 3 dozen concrete recommendations. I was always struck that this was a formative experience for her when she began her service later as the Secretary of Labor. In 1983, she became the first woman to be appointed U.S. Secretary of Transportation, serving for 5 years. And she later served as Secretary of Labor, where her top priorities included workplace safety, resolving a bitter 11-month coal strike, and launching initiatives to help at-risk youth. As Secretary of Transportation, she worked with the late Senators Lautenberg and Lugar to ensure enactment of the 21-year-old age drinking limit. At virtually the same time, she issued a landmark regulation, which is credited with widespread enactment of the first state safety belt laws and airbags in cars. These 3 actions have saved nearly 500,000 lives to date, with a projected 20,000 lives saved per year. But it was not just as the first woman to serve as a cabinet secretary under 2 different presidents. Elizabeth also left her mark on the nonprofit sector. She was only the second woman to serve as president since Clara Barton founded the American Red Cross in 1881. She restructured the world's largest humanitarian organization during her 8 years as president, transforming the way that the Red Cross collects, tests, and distributes 1/2 of our nation's blood supply. Following the Red Cross, she sought the Republican presidential nomination, becoming the first viable female candidate from a major political party. She returned to the political arena in 2002 and became the first woman elected to represent North Carolina in the United States Senate. In 2012, she founded Caring for Military Families, the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, to raise awareness and support for the 5.5 million young spouses, mothers, fathers, and other loved ones caring for our nation's wounded warriors at home. She is leading a movement to shine a light on military caregivers and to generate the critical resources they need to help these hidden heroes. Rarely has this award recognized anyone as versatile as Elizabeth Dole, whether elected or appointed, executive or legislative, leading a venerable nonprofit organization or creating one herself. She has transformed for good everything to which she has set her hand. She has led a life of kindness and purpose, devoting her days from beginning to end in public service. We never know with precision the full effects of the choices we make, the lives we lead, or the influence for good that we have on others. We are, however, grateful for the work that is done by noble souls who inspire us individually and who benefit the society in which we live and the nation that we love. Today we recognize 2 remarkable Americans, Bob and Elizabeth Dole, who have engaged in the challenging work of doing good and serving others throughout their long and dedicated lives. Mike, as a representative of the Ford family and the chair of the foundation, would you please do the honors in presenting the Gerald R. Ford Medal for Distinguished Public Service to Senator Dole?
Thank you, Roger, for those wonderful tributes to Senators Bob and Elizabeth Dole. As I reflect on our family's close relationship with those 2 giants in our public service, I know Dad and Mom had the utmost respect for Bob and Elizabeth Dole, but don't take my word for it. If you go to my father's autobiography, A Time to Heal, Dad writes about why he selected a senator from Kansas to be his vice presidential running mate. And I quote, "Bob Dole was a man with whom I felt very comfortable. We had been friends for years in the House. He had supported my effort to become minority leader, and I had returned the favor in 1971 when he wanted to be named chairman of the Republican National Committee. He had done a good job in his 2 years there, keeping out of intra-party feuds and working to broaden the base of the Republican appeal. And because he had been wounded during World War II, he had strong links with veterans groups and those with disabilities. He had never identified with the Reaganites, but they respected him and acknowledged his skills as a campaigner. He was bright, hardworking, and very loyal to me, and I knew that he would never complain about having to perform disagreeable chores. Equally important, he was the ranking Republican on the Senate Agricultural Committee. The farmers in the Plain States still were mad at me. Yep, a lot of people were mad at Dad that year. Someone had to convince them that I was their friend and that I'd ordered the grain embargo in 1975 only because I had to put the national interest first. Someone had to make them understand. The more I thought about this, the more I concluded that Bob Dole was the man. My father and Senator Bob Dole shared a special relationship as Midwesterners, World War II veterans, congressional leaders, and presidential running mates in 1976. Senator Elizabeth Dole, while you and my father did not serve together in Congress, you both shared the same values, an optimistic view of the world, and your sense of duty and responsibility as American citizen leaders, including an enlightened and moderate political philosophy, a belief in the dignity of all people and respect for every person, a personal commitment to integrity, decency, and compassion, and a call to active civic engagement and public service for the greater good. Your personal and professional life has reflected the highest ideals and values of our great republic. And as a longtime resident of North Carolina, personally, I want to thank you for your exemplary leadership and service as our U.S. Senator. Though different in style and approach, you and Bob each have made a profound and lasting impact on the overall welfare of our nation, collectively, as well as on countless individual lives. Ever grateful for your friendship and partnership in serving our country and its people, my parents would be thrilled for you and Bob to receive the Ford Medal for Distinguished Public Service. So it is very fitting for us to, as a foundation, to bestow this award on both you, Senators Robert and Elizabeth Dole, if you'll join me. Congratulations, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much. Beautiful.
We are so thrilled to have you and Bob as this year's recipient.
Thank you. My heartfelt thanks to you, Michael and Roger, and to the entire Board of Trustees for the award you've bestowed on the Doles. To receive an award bearing the name of a leader who I greatly admired is an honor I'll always cherish. The Gerald R. Ford Medal for Distinguished Public Service is especially meaningful because I share it with Bob Dole, the man who was my soulmate and my own personal Rock of Gibraltar for 46 years. Indeed, it was only 8 months after our wedding when the phone rang in our hotel room in Kansas City, where we were attending the 1976 Republican National Convention. It was President Ford calling to ask Bob if he would be his running mate. The events of those next few days are emblazoned in my memory as clearly as if they occurred yesterday. President Ford had decided that the very next morning, after their acceptance speeches, he and Bob would launch their campaign in Bob's hometown, Russell, Kansas. The logistics of mounting a presidential visit on 24 hours' notice are daunting indeed, but somehow it all came together. There were 10,000 people packed tightly on the courthouse lawn that sun-baked August day. Years earlier, when Bob was wounded at the end of World War II, many of these same friends and neighbors had put money in a little cigar box at Dawson's drugstore to help pay for his medical care. As Bob looked out at that crowd, tears welled up in his eyes and his voice shook a little. I was sitting 10 feet away and instinctively wanted to go to his side. President Ford, sensing what was about to happen, quietly shook his head. He then rose to his feet, leading 10,000 people in a spontaneous ovation. Throughout a campaign where they came back from a 33-point deficit to an eyelash away from victory, and throughout the many years that followed, Bob and I treasured our strong connection and the warmth of our friendship with Gerald Ford. Bob believed, as do I, that the late Speaker Tip O'Neill was absolutely correct when he wrote, "God has been good to America, especially during difficult times. At the time of the Civil War, he gave us Abraham Lincoln, and at the time of Watergate, he gave us Gerald Ford, the right man at the right time, who was able to put our nation back together again." President Ford and Bob Dole shared a great deal in common. Both were born in the Midwest and raised with Midwestern values of hard work, common sense, honesty, and love of country. Both willingly served their country in World War II, as Michael mentioned. Both returned from the war to dedicate their lives to public service. Both would serve as leaders of their party on Capitol Hill, President Ford in the House and Bob in the Senate. And both would earn bipartisan reputations as effective leaders of character and integrity, leaders whose word was their bond, leaders who understood the value of compromise and who were willing to put what was in the country's best interest above what might have been in their best political interest. In accepting the John F. Kennedy Profile and Courage Award in 2001, President Ford eloquently expressed his philosophy with these words: "As far as I'm concerned, there are no enemies in politics, just temporary opponents who might vote with you on the next roll call." May all those who want to make a positive difference in the lives of others through public service remember those words, and may they always remember the life and legacy of Gerald Ford and Bob Dole.